Lieutenant Jack Murphy had exactly two talents in this universe, making a damn good cup of coffee in zero gravity, and pissing off his alien superiors in the Galactic Coalition. Today he was excelling at the latter. Lieutenant Murphy, please explain why you failed to eliminate the Krall prisoners as per Standard Protocol 447B. Commander Zix Nor's mandibles clicked together in what Jack had come to recognize as extreme annoyance. Jack sipped his coffee black, like his future in this military outfit. Well, sir, they were wounded, unarmed, and literally begging for their lives. Shooting them seemed unnecessary. The 7-foot insectoid commander's compound eyes flashed a violent purple. In the 3 years Jack had served as Earth's military liaison to the Galactic Coalition, he'd learned that purple meant someone was about to get their ass handed to them on an exoskeleton platter. Unnecessary? The commander's translator crackled with incredulity. The Krall are our enemies. They attacked Coalition Outpost Delta 9. Military directive clearly states all hostile combatants must be neutralized. Jack nodded thoughtfully. Sure, but they weren't combatants anymore. They were wounded prisoners. On Earth, we call that a war crime. The conference room fell silent. The 5 other alien officers representing species Jack still struggled to pronounce without spitting exchanged what he assumed were horrified glances. Hard to tell when 3 of them had eye stalks, and one communicated primarily through color patterns rippling across its gelatinous form. Commander Zix Nor's antennae twitched, a sign he was accessing the Coalition database. War crime. This concept does not translate. War is crime. Crime is punished. Punishment is death. This is efficiency. Yeah, that's not how we do things back home, Jack replied, leaning back in his chair. The metal seat, designed for beings with entirely different anatomies, dug uncomfortably into his back, just like everything else in Coalition space not made for humans. Instead of killing them, Jack continued, I patched them up, gave them water, and called for medical evac. They were grateful. So grateful that one of them told us about their hidden supply depot on Ataraxia IV. The gelatinous officer, Captain Blorp, not its real name, but Jack couldn't pronounce the series of bubbles that constituted its actual designation, turned a skeptical shade of orange. And you believe this information? Well, we raided the depot this morning and found enough firepower to take out half the sector. So yeah, I'd say it panned out. Another uncomfortable silence fell over the room. You are relieved of duty, Lieutenant Murphy, Commander Zix Nor finally said. Please report to your quarters until further notice. The Coalition Military Tribunal will review your aberrant behavior. Jack finished his coffee with a loud slurp. Cool. Court-martial the only guy who got actual intelligence. Very efficient. As he sauntered out of the room, Jack couldn't help but smile. Earth had warned him about this, the Coalition's obsession with following protocols to the letter, their cold calculus of war. What they hadn't warned him about was how satisfying it would be to throw a human-shaped wrench into their perfectly ordered machine. What Jack didn't realize as he returned to his quarters was that the message about his court-martial was already making its way to Earth. And Earth, contrary to the Coalition's expectations, was not going to apologize for their troublesome human. Earth was sending reinforcements. The Coalition Military Tribunal was held in what Jack could only describe as a cosmic opera house, all dramatic lighting and acoustics designed to make the accused feel like an insignificant speck against the vast, unfeeling universe. It was working. Jack stood in the center of the circular floor, surrounded by 7 raised platforms where the tribunal members perched, loomed, or in one case, hovered ominously. The gallery was filled with various Coalition species, most of whom seemed to be there for the novelty of seeing a human on trial. Lieutenant Jack Murphy of Earth announced the tribunal chief, Grand Adjudicator Vex Tor, whose species resembled a cross between a praying mantis and a law library. You stand accused of weakness in battle, dereliction of duty, and... The translator paused as if searching for the appropriate term, excessive mercy. How do you plead? Jack cleared his throat. Is this as ridiculous an option? The gallery erupted in a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and pheromone releases that the translator in Jack's ear rendered as gasps of shock. Silence. Vex Tor's voice boomed across the chamber. Major Krex Tal, you may begin your prosecution. Major Krex Tal, a Taurian with 4 arms and a permanent scowl etched into his bovine features, stepped forward. The Taurians were renowned throughout the galaxy for their rigid adherence to rules and their inability to grasp the concept of exceptions. Esteemed members of the tribunal, Krex Tal began, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. The case before you is simple. On the 7th rotation of the previous lunar cycle, Lieutenant Murphy encountered 6 wounded Krall soldiers during Operation Swift Justice. Coalition Protocol 447B clearly states that all enemy combatants must be eliminated to ensure tactical advantage and prevent intelligence leakage. He pointed one of his 4 arms accusingly at Jack. The human not only failed to eliminate these threats, but he provided them with medical assistance, water, and called for their evacuation. This is a clear violation of Coalition military code and demonstrates the human's unfitness for service. Jack fought the urge to roll his eyes. He glanced over at his defense representative, Diplomat Nira of the Centaurian delegation. The slender, blue-skinned alien had been assigned to his case reluctantly, after 3 other defense representatives had mysteriously developed scheduling conflicts. Don't worry, Nira had whispered to him earlier, her large, almond-shaped eyes blinking rapidly in what he'd come to recognize as anxiety. I'll try to negotiate a reduced sentence, perhaps only partial mind-wiping instead of execution. Thanks, Jack had replied. Now, as Krex Tal continued listing his supposed crimes with increasing indignation, Jack noticed Nira fidgeting with her data tablet, but occasionally glancing at the chamber entrance as if expecting someone. Furthermore, Krex Tal was saying, the human's actions suggest a fundamental incompatibility between Earth values and Coalition military doctrine. We must ask ourselves, can we trust these humans in combat if they will show mercy to our enemies? The tribunal members nodded gravely, their various appendages moving in gestures of agreement. And finally, Krex Tal concluded with dramatic flair, I present the tribunal with Lieutenant Murphy's own field report, where he admits, even boasts, about his actions, claiming they resulted in valuable intelligence, as if information gained through kindness could possibly be reliable. Jack couldn't contain himself any longer. The intelligence led us to a massive weapons cache. We confirmed it. Lieutenant Murphy. Vex Tor's voice cut through the chamber. You will speak only when addressed directly by this tribunal. Diplomat Nira, control your client. Nira stood, her slender form radiating nervous energy. Apologies, Grand Adjudicator. The human species is known for their emotional outbursts. See? Krex Tal seized the opportunity. Emotionality. Another weakness that has no place in Coalition military operations. The grand doors at the back of the chamber suddenly burst open with a dramatic whoosh. The entire assembly turned as one to see who would dare interrupt a Coalition military tribunal in session. Speaking of emotional outbursts, came a commanding female voice. I believe this session is about to get a whole lot more interesting. Standing in the doorway was a human woman in a crisp Earth Fleet Admiral's uniform, flanked by a team of stern-faced individuals carrying data tablets and wearing expressions that could freeze a sun. Admiral Helena Blackwood, she announced, striding forward with purpose, Earth Diplomatic Corps, Special Division for Interspecies Military Affairs. And these, she gestured to her team, are Earth's representatives for Lieutenant Murphy's defense. Jack couldn't help but grin. The cavalry had arrived, and they looked ready for war. Admiral Helena Hell Hath No Fury Blackwood was a legend in Earth's diplomatic corps, not because she was diplomatic, quite the opposite. She had earned her nickname by negotiating the surrender of 3 separate alien armadas without firing a single shot. The fact that 2 of those species were now enthusiastic trade partners with Earth was considered a miracle by some, a terrifying example of human psychological warfare by others. This tribunal is already in session, Grand Adjudicator Vex Tor announced, his mandibles clicking in agitation. Earth was informed they could send 1 representative. Diplomat Nira has been assigned. Check your interstellar law, Adjudicator, Blackwood interrupted, not breaking stride as she approached the center of the chamber. Galactic Convention on Military Justice, Section 47, Paragraph 9, but any sentient being facing charges before a coalition tribunal has the right to representation from their planet of origin, in numbers deemed necessary for adequate defense. She stopped beside Jack, giving him a quick wink before facing the tribunal again. And we deemed it necessary to bring our team. Jack watched as her entourage spread out around the chamber with practiced efficiency. Among them was a balding man with thick glasses who immediately began setting up what looked like ancient Earth technology actual paper notebooks and pens. "Who's that?" Jack whispered to Admiral Blackwood. "Professor Theodore Lambert," she replied quietly, known as Loophole Lambert in legal circles. He's memorized every military code from 17 different species. The paper is for show makes them nervous when they can't hack his notes. Bex Tor's mandibles clicked rapidly. This is highly irregular. The tribunal was not prepared for additional participants. Then perhaps the tribunal should have reviewed the regulations more carefully before charging a human soldier with showing mercy, Blackwood replied coolly. But since we're all here now, shall we proceed? Or would you prefer we take this matter to the Galactic Council? I'm sure they'd be fascinated by a case where saving lives is considered a criminal offense. The 7 tribunal members conferred among themselves in a flurry of clicks, whistles and pheromone bursts that Jack's translator couldn't quite keep up with. Finally, Vex Tor spoke. The tribunal will permit Earth's extensive representation. However, protocol must be followed. Major Krextal has presented the case against Lieutenant Murphy. Demat Nira, or your designated speaker, may now present the defense. Admiral Blackwood nodded to Nira, who looked visibly relieved to be off the hook. Then she stepped forward. "Before I begin our defense, I'd like to introduce my team properly," she said, gesturing to her colleagues. "Professor Theodore Lambert, expert in comparative military law. Dr. Miranda Chen, xenopsychologist specializing in combat trauma. Commander Jeffrey Okonkwo, military historian. Captain Lena Rodriguez, expert in prisoner intelligence gathering. And Mr. Thomas Wright, our specialist in interspecies humanitarian law." Jack noticed the aliens in the gallery shifting uncomfortably. Earth hadn't sent diplomats. They'd sent a team of legal and military specialists who looked like they ate court-martials for breakfast. "No," continued Blackwood, her voice taking on an edge that made even Jack nervous. "Let's talk about what really happened at Outpost Delta 9. Shall we? Lieutenant Murphy didn't just spare 6 wounded Krall soldiers. He made a tactical decision that resulted in the discovery of a weapons cache that would have been used to destroy 3 coalition colonies." She gestured, and Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, projecting a holographic display of the weapons cache they'd discovered. "Our analysis indicates these weapons had enough firepower to obliterate coalition outposts on Ataraxia IV, Mendel EI, and the civilian settlement on Proxima Centauri's 3rd moon. By showing mercy, Lieutenant Murphy gained intelligence that saved approximately 40,000 coalition lives." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Jack noticed Major Krextal pawing the ground nervously with his hoof-like foot. "But that's not why we're really here, is it?" Blackwood's voice cut through the noise like a laser. "This trial isn't about Lieutenant Murphy's actions. It's about the Coalition's discomfort with human methods. So let me be clear. Earth will not apologize for our approach to warfare. We will not apologize for valuing life, even enemy life. And we certainly will not stand by while one of our soldiers is punished for upholding the principles that make humanity a valuable member of this coalition." She turned to face the gallery directly. "Because here's what you all seem to have forgotten. Earth joined this coalition voluntarily. We brought with us technologies, strategies, and perspectives that have strengthened your position in the galaxy. If you find our methods distasteful, we are more than happy to reconsider our membership." A ripple of alarm passed through the chamber. Jack tried not to smile. The Coalition needed Earth far more than Earth needed the Coalition, a fact that everyone knew but rarely acknowledged out loud. "This isn't a defense," Krextal protested. "This is a threat." "Hey." Blackwood's smile was predatory. "No, Major, this is context for what's about to happen next. Professor Lambert, would you please share your findings with the tribunal?" As the professor stood, Adjusting his glasses with a theatrical flourish, Jack had the distinct feeling that the real battle was just beginning. Professor Theodore Loophole Lambert approached the center of the chamber with the unhurried confidence of a man who had never lost an argument in his life. He was carrying what appeared to be an ancient leather-bound book, which Jack assumed was purely for dramatic effect. The Coalition species were universally unnerved by physical media. They found the idea of information that couldn't be instantly updated or revised deeply disturbing. Esteemed members of the tribunal, Lambert began, his voice surprisingly powerful for his bookish appearance. I have spent the past week reviewing the Coalition military code in its entirety, all 17,843 regulations. Fascinating reading, truly. He opened his book with a flourish. I'd like to direct the tribunal's attention to Protocol 447B, which Major Krall has cited as the basis for Lieutenant Murphy's alleged crime. The holographic display in the center of the chamber showed the text of the regulation. Protocol 447B. All enemy combatants encountered during active operations must be neutralized to maintain tactical advantage and prevent intelligence compromise. A straightforward directive, Lambert continued. However, Major Krall has made a critical error in his interpretation. You see, the term neutralized is defined in Appendix C, subsection 94 of the Coalition Military Code. He flipped through his book with theatrical precision and read, to neutralize, to render a threat inoperative through any means necessary to ensure mission success. Lambert closed the book with a snap. Note the critical phrase, through any means necessary to ensure mission success. Lieutenant Murphy's mission, as detailed in his operations brief, was to gather intelligence on Krall military movements, spying and treating the wounded Krall soldiers. He successfully neutralized them as threats and secured valuable intelligence that led to mission success. Major Krall's bovine features contorted in outrage. That's a deliberate misinterpretation. Everyone knows neutralize means eliminate. Does it? Lambert raised an eyebrow. Because I have here 17 instances from the past solar cycle where Coalition reports used the term neutralize to refer to captured, not killed, enemy combatants. The holographic display filled with examples, each highlighting the relevant text. Furthermore, Lambert continued relentlessly, Lieutenant Murphy's actions are fully compliant with Protocol 223A, which states, Coalition forces shall prioritize intelligence gathering when tactical situation permits. Dr. Miranda Chen stepped forward. If I may add, the xenopsychological assessment of the situation supports Lieutenant Murphy's approach. The Krall, unlike some species, respond positively to displays of mercy. Their cultural framework includes a strong concept of life debt. By sparing these soldiers, Lieutenant Murphy not only gained immediate intelligence but potentially created future assets. Jack watched in awe as Earth's team systematically dismantled the case against him. Each time Major Krall or the tribunal raised an objection, Lambert or another specialist countered with a regulation, precedent, or strategic rationale that left them fumbling for response. Then came the masterstroke. While we're discussing Coalition protocols, Admiral Blackwood said casually, Professor Lambert has identified some concerning discrepancies in the Coalition's own adherence to their regulations. Lambert nodded gravely. Indeed, during my review I discovered that in the past standard year, Coalition forces have violated their own Protocol 892F regarding treatment of surrendered combatants no fewer than 73 times. The holographic display showed a list of incidents, dates, and locations. Protocol 892F, Lambert read aloud, clearly states that surrendered enemy combatants must be processed for intelligence value before any other action is taken. Yet in these 73 documented incidents, Coalition forces executed surrendered combatants without intelligence processing. The chamber went deadly silent. Grand Adjudicator Vex Tor's mandibles clicked in what Jack recognized as extreme discomfort. These allegations are serious and would require investigation. Already done, Lambert interrupted, producing another ancient paper folder. We've compiled affidavits, mission logs, and witness statements for each incident. Most interestingly, 17 of these incidents occurred under the direct command of Major Krall himself. All eyes turned to the Taurian prosecutor, whose four hands were now fidgeting nervously with his data tablet. "This is outrageous," Krall bellowed. "You cannot turn this tribunal against me. I am not the one on trial." Admiral Blackwood's smile was cold as deep space. "Aren't you? Because according to Coalition Military Code Section 1145, Paragraph 3, any officer who systematically violates Coalition protocols may be subject to immediate review and potential court-martial. We're simply following your protocols, Major." The tribunal members were now conferring urgently among themselves, their various appendages gesticulating in what Jack assumed was alarm. Commander Jeffrey Okonkwo, the military historian, stepped forward. "If the tribunal requires context, I've prepared a comprehensive analysis of combat outcomes when intelligence gathering was prioritized versus when it was not. The data overwhelmingly supports Lieutenant Murphy's approach." Captain Rodriguez added, "And my team has calculated the strategic value of the intelligence gained from Lieutenant Murphy's decision. Conservative estimates put the resource savings at approximately 4.7 billion coalition credits, 328 ships, and 24,000 personnel that would have been lost had the Krall weapons cache not been discovered." Jack watched the tribunal members' body language shift from outrage to uncertainty to what appeared to be dawning horror. They hadn't just put a human on trial, they'd put themselves up against Earth's most formidable legal and strategic minds. And they were losing. Badly. Grand Adjudicator Vex Tor called for a recess, which Jack suspected was less about deliberation and more about giving the tribunal time to recover from the intellectual beatdown they'd just received. As they filed out, Jack turned to Admiral Blackwood with newfound respect. "That was incredible. But won't this create problems for Earth Coalition relations?" Blackwood smiled, the stern lines of her face softening slightly. "Lieutenant, what you're witnessing is Earth's approach to interspecies relations. We don't back down, we don't apologize for our values, and we definitely don't let our people get thrown under the bus or whatever the equivalent transport metaphor would be in coalition space." Professor Lambert joined them, adjusting his glasses. "This is actually a textbook example of what we call normative friction. When different cultural systems collide, there's initial resistance, then adaptation. The coalition needs to understand that humanity's approach to warfare isn't just about being nice, it's strategically superior." When the tribunal reconvened an hour later, there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. Grand Adjudicator Vex Tor's mandibles were held in what Jack recognized as a more conciliatory position. "The tribunal has reviewed the evidence and arguments presented," Vex Tor announced. "Before we proceed, we would like to better understand the human perspective on warfare. Admiral Blackwood, would you elucidate?" Blackwood stepped forward, her posture relaxed but commanding. "Gladly. Throughout Earth's long and bloody history, we've learned some hard lessons about war. The most important being, how you fight determines what kind of peace follows." She gestured to Dr. Chen, who projected a series of historical images showing Earth conflicts throughout the centuries. "When we fought wars of extermination, where no quarter was given and no mercy shown, do you know what happened? The enemy fought to the last being. They hid. They formed resistance movements. They never truly surrendered because they had nothing to lose." The images shifted to show reconstruction efforts, humanitarian aid, and former enemies working together. "But when we fought with restraint, with rules, with mercy for the wounded and respect for surrendered troops, when we showed that there was a way out besides death, enemies surrendered earlier. It provided intelligence. And most importantly, they became partners in peace after the conflict ended." Commander Okonkwo stepped forward. "The statistical evidence is clear. Wars where humanitarian principles were observed ended with 60% fewer casualties on both sides and was 75% less likely to reignite within a decade." Major Krall, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "But this is inefficient. In battle, one must eliminate threats completely. Is it efficient to create generational hatred?" Blackwood countered. "Is it efficient to fight the same enemy repeatedly, because they fear surrender more than death? Is it efficient to miss critical intelligence because you killed its source? The Taurian had no response. Mr. Wright, the humanitarian law specialist, addressed the tribunal. What Lieutenant Murphy did wasn't just morally right by human standards, it was strategically sound by any rational metric. The intelligence he gained by showing mercy saved more coalition lives than killing those wounded soldiers ever could have. Jack noticed something remarkable happening among the tribunal members. Their body language, even across different species, was showing signs of what he could only interpret as thoughtful reconsideration. Nearer, his original defender, who had been quiet throughout most of the proceedings, suddenly stood. "If I may address the tribunal." When granted permission, she continued, "As liaison to Earth for 3 cycles, I have observed human military doctrine firsthand. Their approach appeared contradictory to me, at first fierce in battle, yet merciful in victory. I could not understand how these traits coexisted until I witnessed the results." She turned to face the gallery. The Krall surrender rate in sectors where human forces operate is 34% higher than in other sectors. Intelligence quality from human processed prisoners is rated 27% more actionable. These are not emotional metrics, they are tactical advantages. Grand Adjudicator Vex Tor's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Lieutenant Murphy, this tribunal would hear from you directly. Why did you choose to spare those Krall soldiers?" Jack stood, feeling surprisingly calm. "Sir, I did it because it was the right thing to do, but also because it was the smart thing to do. Those soldiers weren't threats anymore, they were assets. Every being in the galaxy fears death and responds to kindness. That's not just a human trait. By treating those wounded Krall with dignity, I showed them that surrender to the Coalition didn't mean certain death. The intelligence they provided voluntarily saved thousands of lives." He paused, looking around the chamber. "If the Coalition wants to win wars rather than just battles, you need to think beyond the immediate tactical situation. Every action creates ripples. Word spreads. Right now, Krall troops in my sector are surrendering rather than fighting to the death because they've heard they'll be treated fairly. That's not weakness, that's psychological warfare at its most effective." The chamber fell silent as his words sank in. Finally, Grand Adjudicator Vex Tor spoke. "This tribunal finds that Lieutenant Jack Murphy acted within the parameters of Coalition protocols, correctly interpreting the mission directive to prioritize intelligence gathering. Furthermore, the results of his actions demonstrate sound tactical judgment. All charges are hereby dismissed." A murmur ran through the gallery, surprise from some species, approval from others. But Vex Tor wasn't finished. Additionally, this tribunal recommends a full review of Coalition protocols regarding prisoner treatment and intelligence gathering, with input from Earth's military and diplomatic corps. Major Krall will be placed on administrative leave pending investigation of the allegations brought forth today. Jack couldn't help but grin as Krall's bovine face registered shock and outrage. And finally, Vex Tor concluded, "Lieutenant Murphy is to be commended for his actions, which exemplify the highest standards of military service, not just by human metrics, but by the fundamental goal of all military action, to achieve strategic objectives while minimizing unnecessary loss of life." As the tribunal adjourned, Jack turned to Admiral Blackwood and her team in amazement. "I can't believe you got them to completely reverse their position." Blackwood smiled. "We didn't just win your case, Lieutenant. We just changed Coalition military doctrine. Not bad for a day's work." 6 months after what Coalition species now referred to as the Murphy incident, Jack found himself in a position he never could have anticipated, but teaching a mandatory course on human combat ethics and strategic mercy to a classroom full of Coalition officers from 17 different species. "And that's why we don't just kill everyone and sort it out later," he concluded his lecture, watching his students' various appendages scribble notes, tap data pads, or in the case of the gelatinous Milbari officers, absorb information directly through their semi-permeable membranes. Questions. A Taurian officer, not Krall, who had been reassigned to a remote outpost counting space rocks, raised one of his 4 hands. "But Lieutenant Murphy, What if the enemy is truly untrustworthy? Some species are known for deception. Great question, Jack replied. That's why we verify information obtained from prisoners. But here's the thing, even false information tells you something. If a prisoner lies, that pattern of deception can reveal what they're trying to protect. It's still intelligence. After class, Jack met with Admiral Blackwood, who had remained on the Coalition headquarters station as Earth's new military liaison. The promotion and assignment had been Earth's not-so-subtle way of ensuring their newfound influence on Coalition doctrine remained intact. "How are the Coalition's finest taking to your wisdom?" she asked as they walked through the station's central promenade. Jack laughed. "Some get it right away. Others think it's a trick. The Volcrans still believe humans are secretly the most ruthless species in the galaxy and that we're playing some kind of long con." "Well, they're not entirely wrong," Blackwood replied with a wry smile. "Strategic mercy is a form of psychological warfare. We're just honest about its benefits." They passed a group of Krall diplomats another sight that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. The Coalition Krall peace talks had begun shortly after the discovery of the weapons cache, with the surrendered soldiers Jack had treated serving as key intermediaries. "By the way," Blackwood said, "Professor Lambert asked me to give you this, said you might appreciate the irony." She handed him a data crystal. When Jack activated it, he saw Coalition Military Protocol 447B, the same regulation he'd been charged with violating. Only now it had been amended with a subsection titled the Murphy Doctrine, which formalized the approach to wounded enemy combatants that had nearly gotten him court-martialed. "They named it after me?" Jack was genuinely surprised. "Your case became something of a watershed moment," Blackwood explained. "The Coalition species have been fighting the same enemies for centuries, with the same results. Your approach demonstrated a viable alternative. The Strategos Council reviewed the data and couldn't argue with success." As they reached the observation deck, they paused to look out at the stars. A Coalition fleet was departing, heading not to battle, but to establish a new outpost in former Krall territory, now designated as a neutral zone. "You know what the funniest part is?" Jack said after a moment. "Earth sent its most formidable legal team people, literally nicknamed war criminals in diplomatic circles, to defend me for showing mercy." Blackwood laughed. "That's humanity in a nutshell, Lieutenant. We'll move heaven and earth to defend our right to be compassionate. We'll fight like demons for the chance to make peace." "And that," Jack replied, "is why the rest of the galaxy finds us so confusing." "Confusing, yes," came a voice behind them. They turned to see Nira approaching, now wearing the insignia of the Coalition Diplomatic Corps, but also fascinating, and increasingly indispensable. She handed Jack a new set of insignia Lieutenant Commander's bars. "The Coalition Military Command approved your promotion this morning. They've also requested you develop a comprehensive training program on human military ethics for all Coalition forces." Jack accepted the insignia with a bemused smile. "So I'm being rewarded for nearly getting court-martialed." "You're being recognized for changing our understanding of effective warfare," Nira corrected. "Though I must admit, many species still find human methods paradoxical." "That's our secret weapon," Admiral Blackwood said with a grin. "While everyone else is trying to be consistently brutal, we're consistently unpredictable. Show mercy when they expect cruelty, show overwhelming force when they expect restraint. And send war criminals to defend the merciful," Jack added. As the three of them watched the Coalition fleet disappear into hyperspace, Jack reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. 6 months ago, he'd been on trial for the crime of compassion. Now, that same compassion was being codified into galactic law. Somewhere out there, across the stars, former enemies were laying down arms not because they'd been beaten into submission, but because humans had shown there was another way. A better way. Humanity. "Fuck yeah," Jack whispered to himself, smiling at the stars. Behind him, his translator helpfully converted the phrase for his alien colleagues, who nodded in solemn agreement, completely missing the irony, but somehow understanding the sentiment perfectly.